listening to episode 7 of the Blindside Rugby Podcast with me, your host, Chris Hattingh. My apologies that there wasn't an episode last week before the big Springboks All Blacks game, but there were some technical difficulties with the podcast. But we're back this week, so getting straight into it. So, as I'm sure all of you watched and bit off your fingernails, clung to your couch seat, got very, very stressed, maybe punched a drywall or two, as I got very close to doing myself. My name might be Chris, but sometimes I act like a Kyle, especially when the All Blacks are playing. The All Blacks hosted the Springboks in Wellington in the Rugby Championship, and the game finished at 16 points all. So the spoils were shared between the two teams after a last-minute try by Herschel Yankees. That guy seems to score now every time he comes on the field for the Springboks, so he'll be wanting to continue that trend in the future. I've listened to and watched some analysis of the game. Most people, I think in South Africa and New Zealand, at least from the analysts' point of view, they seem to be quite happy with the performances of the two respective teams. They say that it was very tightly contested. It was a good indication for the World Cup that both teams are playing well. But I'm going to take the contrarian view and say that I think it was pretty low quality rugby from both teams. I feel the All Blacks especially made way too many handling errors, way too many mistakes. You can't play like that at international rugby level, never mind at Rugby Championship level. That's the pinnacle of international rugby to me, probably higher than the Six Nations, or has been maybe recently, not so much, but in the past it has been. I think simply not good enough from the All Blacks. There wasn't any reason for them to be so bad in their handling. The Springboks did do well in their rush defence, but the All Blacks managed to get past that later on in the second half. But even that, I think there's no excuse for not catching a rugby ball properly and taking it into contact. I'm not sure. I watched the breakdown. The New Zealand sort of premier Sky TV in New Zealand hosts this program. It's their sort of premier rugby analysis program, like we have here at Talks and Chops for the Afrikaans community, or First 15 for the English-speaking rugby fans on SuperSport. But on the breakdown, we had Justin Marshall, Goldie, the former winger for the All Blacks, Ali Williams. And there was a lady, I think she plays with the Black Ferns. She was also on the show this week. And they talked about how there's clearly a plan with the All Blacks, especially with Beauden Barrett and Richie Mo'unga, two playmakers on the field at the same time. They can see the sort of pattern of attack that the All Blacks are trying to establish. And I don't know. I'm very concerned at this point in time. I feel like there's a bit too much faith in Steve Hansen at this point, and people aren't questioning him strongly enough, maybe from the inside as well. People are a bit scared to criticize the way things are going, and therefore things will keep going in that direction. But all in all, the All Blacks for me didn't play particularly well overall. In the second half, they played a lot better. First half, the Springboks completely dominated them. I think on balance, I don't like saying this sort of thing because I think the team that deserves to win will win. They'll score the most points on the scoreboard, but I don't think either team deserved to win because I think both teams played pretty badly. Springboks kicked aimlessly a lot of the time. They didn't convert their chances in the first half when they had the All Blacks on the back foot. And myself as an All Blacks fan, when their opposition plays well and beats them, I have no issue with that. It's more, it really gets to me. It really, really grates my patience when the All Blacks make their own mistakes and are their own worst enemies. And they seem to be doing that more and more regularly. On that, I don't know why Sonny Bill Williams is getting all these starts and has all the support from the All Blacks coaching setup. He had the ball ripped from him, I think, the first time he went into contact in the game. He, to me, looked pretty listless and lacked energy on attack. He didn't go into tackles hard. He tackled fine. He made his tackles, but that's the bare minimum at All Blacks level to be considered an All Black. I don't think he added anything that other players wouldn't have brought to the table. Indeed, I think Nane Laumape, for me, is the form number 12 at the moment, if not Ryan Crotty, but I think Crotty is still injured. So I would start Nane Laumape at 12 and Jack Goodhue at 13. Goodhue, for me, played really, really well. He created some space. He obviously scored that try. from the Beauden Barrett pass. On Beauden Barrett, it might take him a few games to get used to playing there at fullback with Richie Mo'unga at fly half. I think he's obviously very fast. He can see the space very well, but at the moment things just aren't linking nicely for the All Blacks. Maybe it'll all come to fruition, and I'll have to eat my words about Steve Hansen and the way things are going in general. But I think there needs to be, I don't know, something needs to change. Whether it's something big or something small, maybe it's a bunch of small things instead of one big thing. But there's something not right in the All Blacks for me. When I sit down to watch them now, it doesn't feel like they're going to win necessarily. And of course, for the neutral and for other fans, non-All Blacks fans, they want rugby to be more of a contest than it has been, but I just don't have that feeling of confidence in the All Blacks at the moment like I always used to. When they scored that try against the Springboks just before halftime, that to me felt like, classic All Blacks. They do that sort of thing, and I thought they would push on in the second half, but just as the Springboks didn't use their chances in the first half, so too didn't the All Blacks in the second half. And ultimately, the Springboks made them pay for it, and good for the Springboks to come away from New Zealand with a draw. Last year, of course, they beat the All Blacks in New Zealand for the first time since 2009, so good for them. I think they're building good confidence, and Rassie Erasmus, their coach, I think he's doing well, downplaying sort of big expectations. He's keeping things relatively measured at the moment, which you need to do. I think as an international rugby coach, you need to keep your players relatively grounded so that they don't let the success get to their heads. So the next time the All Blacks and the Springboks will meet will be in the pool stage. Their first game in the Rugby World Cup in Japan in September will be against each other. So let's see what happens there. I think with projections and things like that, people who are better at maths and spreadsheets than I am can tell you better than I could at any point. But there is a chance that they could meet each other in the final, in which case I don't think my heart is going to survive, to be quite honest. I don't know if I should watch that game. I don't know. The All Blacks look nervous at the moment, a bit testy. They just need to settle in. Maybe their next two games against Australia will give them that, if they can really put Australia to the sword. That'll give them more confidence going into the World Cup, because at the moment I'm not feeling very, very confident as an All Blacks fan. And it's not often that I say that sort of thing, or that any All Blacks fan will say that. So let's see what happens. The experiment with Beauden Barrett and Richie Mo'unga at fly half, I did like elements of it. I think Mo'unga could have done more to make the Springboks guess on defence. He didn't really keep them guessing, so he needs to work on that. But of course, he's not as experienced as Beauden Barrett at international rugby, so maybe that'll come with time. But of course, the World Cup is coming, so there isn't a lot of time left. I think as Springbok fans, you can be... No, I'm not even going to say that you can be happy with the draw. You should not be happy with a draw, because the Springboks, to me, should have won that game. So, just in terms of predictions, I predicted, my pick was New Zealand to win that game by 5, so it would have been a close win for them if Yankees hadn't scored that try in the final minute. But so 16 all at the end of the day. Just on the World Cup, so today on the 1st of August, as I'm recording this podcast, it is now 50 days to go until the Rugby World Cup, so we're nearly there. Just keep that in the back of your heads. We're almost at the World Cup, and I think there are a whole bunch of teams in contention. At this point, I sort of hope that either like Ireland or Argentina win it, because the rugby that South Africa and New Zealand played, I don't know, it didn't, I wasn't a fan of it. So, on that note, Argentina lost to Australia by 4 points. Australia beat Argentina 20 points to 16 in Australia. For that game, I picked Australia to win by 5. So, well within the margin of error there. Almost got the margin correct exactly. A game of mistakes again. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because it's the first few games of the international season. Teams usually don't gel until at least the 4th or 5th game together at international level, normally during the year. And it wasn't an amazing game to watch. Obviously good for the Aussies that they got a win against a pretty good Argentina side. But Argentina, to me, again, it's a theme with them that they shoot themselves in the foot. So I don't know what they're going to do. They need to sort out their discipline, their chances. I think they knocked the ball on once, if not twice, near the Australians' try line when they could have scored or should have scored a try. And at this level, you have to take those chances. So good for the Aussies, but nothing to me that shows that they're truly going to turn things around. For them, it was obviously very nice to see Christian Lealiafano back on the field. I think he played 57, 58 minutes. That's after recovering from leukemia, which he had a few years ago. So obviously a very nice story to see him. He's also the Brumbies captain. So very nice to see him back on the field for the Aussies. Good signs for them in small areas, but nothing to suggest to me that they're going to challenge the likes of New Zealand, Ireland, and South Africa at the World Cup. So the last round of the Rugby Championship, remember it's a shortened tournament this year because of the World Cup. The final round of fixtures will take place on the 10th of August, so next weekend, and I'll do previews for those games on next week's podcast. We've got Australia hosting New Zealand and then Argentina hosting South Africa. I think South Africa at the moment are top of the log of the Rugby Championship. Not that any team will necessarily want to win the Rugby Championship and then lose the World Cup, but it could help you with some momentum going into the global tournament. So let's see what happens. Okay, past results in the Currie Cup the past weekend. Let's see. The Pumas lost to the Blue Bulls at home by 17 points to 25. Free State absolutely thumped Griquas by 68 points to 14. I did not see that one coming because Griquas have been the form team so far. And then Western Province were beaten by 2 points by the Golden Lions, 28 points to 30. That was at Newlands in Cape Town, so a very good win for the Lions there at the end. Good to see them grabbing that one just near the end. The fixtures for the coming week, we've got Free State versus the Golden Lions. Pumas are hosting the Sharks and the Blue Bulls are hosting the Griquas. I'd say that first game, Free State against the Golden Lions on Friday, try and watch that game. That's probably my pick for the best game this weekend. In terms of the table, we've got Free State on top on 10 points, Griquas second on 10, the Golden Lions on 9, and Western Province on 7. And then in terms of domestic New Zealand rugby, the Mitre 10 Cup starts next week. Obviously, I'll be supporting Canterbury, the Mitre 10 team of the Canterbury Crusaders. So let's see what happens there. Always nice to watch these local competitions and see new talent coming to the fore. My player of the week, it has to go to Herschel Jantjies again, as it was the previous week. He came onto the field against the All Blacks. He collected the ball off of Aaron Smith, so beating a much more experienced scrum half next to him and competing for the ball. And he scored a try, which Handre Pollard then converted for the draw against the All Blacks in New Zealand. So, yeah, really, really good form from Jantjies, showing some good temperament. And I think he's definitely going to be one for the future for the Springboks. I don't think he'll start at the World Cup. That'll probably be Faf de Klerk, but maybe he'll start against some of the lesser teams in the pool stages. Good to see that. And then in Australian rugby, just some news. Former Wallabies fullback Israel Folau has commenced court proceedings against Rugby Australia following his sacking in May. And from what I read, I might be wrong here, so please correct me if I'm wrong in the details, but I think those proceedings could start during the World Cup, so it's going to distract massively from Australia and their campaign at the World Cup, which is something they don't need, obviously. But yeah, Folau obviously feels that he was wronged by Rugby Australia, and he's going to try and pursue legal proceedings to see what happens. And then one last story just to finish off on, which I thought was a really, really nice story. In South Africa, FNB has partnered with Springbok Ampiwe Dianti as the first professional player to be part of the FNB patron program. The program is designed to prepare players for life beyond their professional sporting careers by matching them with FNB-banked businesses. So very nice to see. Probably in the past, we've seen rugby players just focus on their playing careers and not have anything business-wise or personal-wise to fall back on once their careers were finished, either prematurely through injury or just through retirement. So very nice to see FNB initiating this initiative. That really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? So good to see. Hopefully this program will be a success and set up players such as Dianchi, for future success after their playing careers. All right, I'll end on that note, trying to keep it relatively short this week. Not a whole lot in the news apart from the All Black Springboks game. Again, just to recap there, pretty disappointing for me from All Blacks perspective. They have a lot of things to work on. So let's see if they can get it all flowing as we head closer to the World Cup. Just in closing, thank you once again very much for listening. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Please share the link with your colleagues, your friends, your co-workers, anyone who you know is interested in rugby, loves watching this sport. Thank you all for joining me. I'll talk to you again next week when I'll go through the previews for the final round of the Rugby Championship. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.